as well. And if you guys did not know, I did this last year and the years prior. I'm gonna be talking about and along with the Netflix series. So we talking about Daredevil, Born Again, season 2. I'm gonna be talking about episodes 1 through 3, breaking them down each piece by piece. I'm not gonna go through every single detail, but I will be going over through the biggest negatives and biggest positives, biggest pros and biggest cons of what I like about them. So we getting into episode 1. Yeah, there are, some positives that I will say that I did like. But before we even get to that point, in episode 1, I do like the return of Karen Page. I think that adds a bit of the layer aspect and the aspect to Matt Murdock because that feels like that dynamic, that friendship is pretty much there. SJ was in Hell's Kitchen. I thought that was a really big thing. Um, I also really like the fact throughout the episode of the ABTF, as far as this whole group of armed mercenary cops, rogue mercenaries, mercenary agents. I thought that was pretty cool seeing them unfold. Seeing their level of action, knowing that they're all after Matt Murdock as well. I thought that was pretty cool, pretty interesting, and pretty engaging, to say the least. I thought the look of that was pretty cool and decent, because it really just gives another premise and another case of just fighting a certain level of consciousness, another level of a common enemy, rather than somebody that Matt Murdock has to less worries about. But like I said, that's more worries, but at the same time, that's less that Matt Murdock has to worry about the totem pole, because later on throughout these other 2 episodes of the show, pretty much members of the ATF pretty much dismantle and disassociated and separated. So I thought that was pretty cool to see them, but at the same time, they all got what they got, and I thought it was pretty engaging and pretty cool to see that. And also, it gave levels of Matt Murdock and his level of a way of finding out things, more satisfying. And I also like the fact that him and Karen are back together, so they're gonna go pretty much find out more. He wasn't like I said in this one. He wasn't hiding. He didn't go into a bunker, go into hiding. He was just pretty much finding out exactly what was Kingpin's plans, and what was the things he was already up to and planning. We got that more in the first episode of. We got that more or less in all 9 episodes of the first season, but here it's just pretty much planning on getting a recap and revamp and revitalize of it. Now there are things that I did not like about this first episode, and where I'm gonna get to it. First off, I did not like them showing so much of Matt Murdock's team, and I get it with Kirsten and everything, and I get the whole courtroom drama because it's pretty much just trying to get more layered up and build up and more setup, to get more to where it's gonna go. But like I said, I don't really care about Kirsten. I don't really care about the whole White Tiger and Angela stuff. That they showed that throughout this entire first episode and parts of the second episode, which I really did not care about. Like, I don't care about that storyline. That storyline pretty much had ended, back in the first season, when we know about what happened to, what happened to the White Tiger and what happened to Angela, her father, which pretty much we already know about him wanting to protect her. And so I just did not like that aspect in the show. I thought that was kind of a bit too audacious and too mundane. And so in my opinion, that kind of just took away the mystique and a little bit of the layer, throughout, because if you want to find so much more about other characters, it's just like you kind of just really did not want to see that. Another thing I really wasn't the biggest fan of, and I'm kind of slowly beginning to get tired of this whole build up to what Kingpin's plans were. We know about his weapons. We know about him setting up in the mayor-elect office. We know about him doing some dirty, grimy, shady things. I wish they could actually go so much more and layer and the depth, and this whole thing with him and Vanessa, him and Vanessa being together, like they want to, at one point in time when all this stuff, all this mayor-elect stuff, and him, running this area district in New York, when all that stuff is pretty much being run down, and all this stuff with him and the AVTF, and all this stuff that as far as his weapons and how he keeps everything locked in this store. when all of that stuff ends up going away, when all that stuff goes away, it feels like the show, and it feels like this first episode and leading into the second one, which I'll talk about, it's gonna lead them into running away together or something. And I felt like that is just, it's all seems like it's just gonna be too good to be true. And I feel like something probably will happen to his woman Vanessa. I feel like something is probably gonna happen to her at some point down the line. I just think that it's just too good of a storyline to just keep going. And I feel like it's gonna get more of like not really as layered and not really as primarily focused. And I feel like that in some aspects of the show did not really end up being taken about. So I feel like the first episode has some things that really evolved and really took itself there. Like I said, Matt Murdock going into more of the New York subways, into the tunnels, and figuring out more of, some documentations, knowing where Kingpin is going to like really, Wilson Fisk knowing where his operation is going to be handled, more underground, more away from the scenery, and and more away into like I said in the first season they had more um digging, digging grounds and digging in graveyards, building all different factories and different companies, warehouses and stuff. So I feel like in this one, Matt Murdock and Karen end up figuring out the things that he's been up to all this time, and so I feel like that was the pretty much the main thing that's the primary focus and importance. So yeah, I thought that the part of the first episode was pretty decent, but overall, I just feel like it sets up a lot of things and it feels like a lot of buildup. But I hope when we get later on down the road, hold on, let me get to. It gets very interesting. Let's just say that. All right, guys, hold up. Now, episode two, we get to more of the shoot the moon. Pretty much, like I said, with him, with Matt Murdock and Karen, they're trying to figure out more of Kingpin's plans. Um, and it's more of his anti-vigilante. There's more anti-vigilante mission, the whole legislation. Matt Wilson Fisk, of course, he's like he did in the first season. He's claiming that Murdoch has been gone. He's claiming that he's not coming back. He wants to get rid of all the vigilantes in New York. He wants to clear all the different ways and pathways in New York and everything. So at the end of the day, he wants to find, he wants to absolve and dissolve of all like vigilantes and different crimes, scenes for any other pathway getting worse. And I thought that was interesting. I thought there was some aspects that I did sort of like in that instance, but I feel like it does not lead and out into something that really makes me feel like it's carried and concentrated. But I do like a lot of aspects surrounding Heather, and if you don't know, she was the one. Heather Glennon was the one that was dating Matt Murdock at one point in time, while Karen, and of course what happened with his other best friend Foggy, with his other best friend at the time when working with him with the Lord at the Lord company. Heather was dating Matt Murdock at the time, and Heather Glenn ended up in her office, ended up getting in encountering and end up getting an encounterment with Muse. And she ends up getting into a fight, all out fist fight, all out brawl with Muse, and she ends up pretty much suffering from PTSD, and she all of a sudden has like paranormal nightmares, hallucinations and dreams that she ends up being seeing Muse like all in different angles and different directions, and it ends up affecting her, traumatizing her. But even back in the first season when Daredevil was whooping on Muse, she still ends up feeling the aftermath and the after effect. Even when she was trying to talk to Matt about it, Matt wasn't even really listening to Heather at the beginning point in time. And then she goes back into work and goes back into her office. Heather ends up suffering from that PTSD, the traumatic disorder, and she's just dismembered and this entanglement, and this whole entanglement feels like that she's just not all about herself. She's not all to herself. She feels like she's all alone, like she's not around, like in any given way. Feels like people that's all around her, or Matt, that she seems like she wants him to be around her so much, and he's pretty much not concentrated. She's pretty much being he's like he's always is, being pretty much being that vigilante, wants to stop and absolve all crime, wants to stop Kingpin at every given turn. He is not really caring about Heather at one point, so they end up breaking it off at some point, and the relationship didn't get worked out. Now, the things that I really wanted to see a lot more in the second and third episode, I really did.
Right now, the most punk rock thing you can do is be kind, be raw, be open, look out for the person that needs looking out for, be unapologetically earnest.
All right, my bad, guys. That was a commercial. James Gunn was talking. I don't know how the heck he even got on there. But anyways, like I was saying, getting back to the actual breakdown of the episode, I feel like uh, after Heather was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and end up envisioning about Muse being all around her and everything, and I like the fact in the second episode we end up getting a follow up of those things, but at the same time, like I said, Karen and Matt going into more of these these underground like tunnels. They find more documentation, find more information about Kingpin and his operations and his team from the end of the first episode that leads into this. And also, it also, like I said, in the Netflix show, we did have a lot of overstuff, and of course with Punisher, Elektra in the hand. I feel like we getting more build up, we getting more setup to these things, and they're starting to find more layers and starting to find more ideas, and instead of recycling the same points. So I understand why people are complaining that it's starting off slow, but I really feel like the build up is starting is setting up a lot of build up, and is building up to things that could happen and could take place in a way where we could actually relate as the audience, but it's kind of taking forever to get there because it's not a whole lot of action. It's just a lot of like deportation and exposition. And speaking of that, the exposition and more a lot of tension, I feel like let me see if this one tackles what I'm talking about. Yeah, and so like I was saying with Bull, and then of course we get to the point where Bullseye being still in the wind, driving by Cathedral to ask about Matt's sister's mom Maggie, but he doesn't do do much killing this time around. Fisk bloodies a trainer, and prepping for a boxing match and a PR stunt, but he's really bulking up to go one on one with Daredevil, but Daredevil limits himself into small guerrilla like strikes against Fisk's forces. Small victories and threaten to disappoint the audience as much as they do Karen. Between the two episodes, it was a big action sequence at the end of episode 3 when Daredevil frees the captives in Fisk's secret prison. To help the Angela Del Toro, Camila Rodriguez, the sequence looked fantastic, giving Jack Adesco intimidated Tony Dalton a chance to show his swordsman kills, and letting Angela debut as the new White Tiger only Matt wears a full costume. And also, I do like in episodes 2 and 3, how we get to see more of Karen and Matt's evolvement and and evolve in the characterization and how they get to more like detective work and solving different like solving and finding out different equations, finding out different mysteries and everything about what's going on with like I said with Kingpin and so on and so forth. And I did like that one moment in sequence where Fisk ends up bloody in the trainer with a boxing match and a PR stunt. That was really raw and authentic and just encouraging. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was pretty just whirlwinding. I thought that was pretty good. And then of course, once we get to episode 3, which I really want to highlight, which is probably the biggest thing out there, um, that whole fight between Matt Murdock and the whole AVTF crew, and then Matt was pretty much winning and was absolutely dominating and pretty much bullying all his way through. I thought it was great. I thought it was a great battle between him and the AVTF crew, and then, but the AVTF crew, once they toppled and conquered and take up over him, we end up seeing, of course. Oh, hey, what's going on, Bianca Martin? Hey, how you going? Oh, Manuel, hey, what's going on? I'm just talking about the Daredevil episodes 1 and 3, Daredevil Born Again, uh, Marvel Studios TV show. If you didn't know. So anyway, as I was saying, the things that I did like about episode 3 is I like the setups, the expositions. I like the setups. I like the expositions that we got with Karen and Matt. I like the setup and build up that we had with where we had Kingpin talk with people inside of his crew. I actually like some aspects as far as building into more of the costumes and wardrobe, and I think it was more of like a commercial ad. It was like a PR stunt. In that boxing match, like I was saying earlier, as I was reading it, and then I also like the pop up TV commercial ad where somebody is dressed like a smaller version of Fisk. I thought that was pretty great. I thought it was pretty cool. And like I said, with the whole Matt Murdock and the AVTF crew as they was battling, I thought that was great, and I thought that had a really good, interesting plot twist because he ends up getting saved, and we end up seeing the logo on the end where there was a more of like a knife cutting knife that ends up swiping out and wiping out all of the AVTF members. We end up knowing who that was, and that of course was Bullseye. That was a really great moment, and that was really a badass moment to really end on a high note in the in episode 3. So I hope we end up getting the 4 in episodes 4 and 5, where there's a lot of end up payoff. And from what I've heard from critics and fans along the lines, they said it was going to get better as the season goes on. So I think that is a great thing. So I would love to see that get better and go further than what it is. And go further what it the where it's going now, because I feel like I said with episodes 1 and 3, it's a lot of build up, it's a lot of setup to where they think it's gonna go, but I feel like we was recycling certain points that season 1 already had tackled, and I just think it wasn't going anywhere at first. But once I was rewatching episodes again, it kind of grew on me, and it got a little bit better. But I still hoping to see more of everything else when it comes to Punisher and Bullseye. I hope we get more of them in the show. I hope we see more of Heather and imagining more of that. Uh, I still am not really a big fan of Angela being like this whole new white tiger. I'm not really a big fan of that. But like I said, we'll see more going down the line. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Daredevil Born Again, season 2, episodes 1 and 3. Tell me what you guys think down in the comment section down below. I'm gonna be heading on out of here. I'm out. Peace.